Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 149, The Ascension. I am Morgan, aka Bond Diesel, and this is a podcast about gaming, gaming news, gaming platforms, and technology from the perspective of a lifelong nerd and now father. Please take a moment to subscribe to and rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on, comments on the YouTube video, retweets on Twitter, and iTunes reviews are the most helpful. Also, be sure to let me know if you have any questions or topics for the next episode by replying on Twitter posts, in the YouTube comments, or by becoming a patron. I would like to thank this month's Patreon supporters Hassan, Christian, Darren, Tim, PK, Man-Made Golf, Lunchbox, and Dale. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/BondDiesel. This episode, we will talk about the Ascent release and thoughts, PS5 expandable memory, Halo Infinite's beta flights, listener questions, content updates, and more. So, jumping right on into it, we'll start off with the PS5 M.2 expansion beta. So, if you have a PS5, you already know this, or if you're a Sony fan, you may as well, or if you just pay attention to gaming news in general. Sony is finally updating, in the beta process of allowing people to expand their memory. So, if you know, the Xbox Series X and the PS5 are doing their expandable memory very different this generation. The Xbox has a proprietary hookup in the back of the system that is essentially a proprietary M.2 connector if you're a computer person. So instead of it just being like a USB external drive, it's actually an M.2 like PCIe, PCI Express, jack right into your motherboard, which is extremely fast and very nice. Xbox decided to go with a proprietary, it almost looks like a USB drive, but it's not. Right now, the only one is made by Seagate, and it's I think around $190 now for 1 terabyte of expandable memory. You can still use the USB, like USB 3, which is fast, but still isn't as fast as an M.2. It's very quick. So Xbox went with a very limited but available day one solution that has worked from day one. Where Sony has taken a weird route, which in the long run will probably work well for them. But they've done something weird. So the way the PS5 works is that you pop off the cover of the PS5 and there's a little door that you unscrew and you can pop in an M.2 into just a normal M.2 bay, just like a motherboard on a PC. The issue is that up until now, it didn't work. Partially because there were no supported M.2 drives, and partially, I don't know. It seems easy to assume that it's mostly because the software wasn't complete. There's no hardware reason why it is only now starting to work, and it's only for people using the beta operating system on PS5. So you have to opt in. It doesn't mean so it's not final. So it could have issues. Weird, very weird in my opinion. But whatever. I mean, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. Like I said, in the long run, this may work out well for them as SSD prices drop and stuff. The unique thing is that the PS5 is using a extremely high speed SSD. And so it's going to be a pretty small number of SSDs that are fully going to take advantage of what this can do and what it requires. And they're very expensive. So I saw someone, there's some stupid console war crap going on about it. And I saw some guy say something along the lines of like, well, I can throw in a 4 terabyte M.2 and the Xbox people will cry or whatever. Like that a 4 terabyte M.2 that will work in this, I believe, is over $1,000 right now. So if you want to spend twice as much as you did on your console for more memory than you'll ever use, go nuts. You can even own the Xbox players that way, I guess. So I mean, my overall thoughts on it is that I think the more open-ended able to use this, like I said, will work out for Sony in the long run. They'll make it so, I mean, there'll be some PS5 branded M.2s, so grandma isn't trying to figure out what an NVMe drive is compared to a typical SSD and blah blah blah. There will be a handful of like very clearly PS5 branded M.2s that come out. They'll probably be kind of expensive though. I don't think they're going to get it cheaper than Xbox's expandable memory, even though the Xbox One is proprietary. And even if they do, like, you'll be able to find ones cheaper, but they probably won't be the ones catered to PS5. And the reason I say that is because it's actually a requirement, or I think a heavy suggestion, that there's no natural heat sink or cooling for this device when you put it in. And M.2s run very hot. Now they actually have to run hot. If they don't run hot, they're actually more efficient when they're warm. Obviously, they can overheat, and that's a bad thing. But it's interesting. Like, so what I'm getting at is you actually have to have a very specific thickness of heat sink and stuff for this to install correctly and things like that. So it's very odd. PlayStation has, I think PlayStation is very lucky that they just kicked so much ass with the PS4, because if we, obviously this is, stupid, but if you ignore the success of this last gen and purely look at the way these two systems have released, I think you still give the edge to PlayStation for games. Ratchet and Clank and Returnal and some of the exclusives they have are really great, but I don't think it's like miles better than what Xbox is doing. And I really think from a messaging point of view, from a hardware point of view, from a ease of use point of view, that Xbox is really dragging PlayStation around. But because PlayStation moved twice as many units last gen or more, I think it doesn't matter, because people love their PlayStation, and that's dope. That's awesome. So it's weird. It's just it's so odd that the fact that like this memory, it's taken not almost a year, but like 9 months or whatever, or 8 or 9 months to get to a point where you can expand your memory that isn't just a USB drive on the PlayStation. It's very odd. It seems like something that shouldn't have taken this long and should have been available from the start, even if there weren't drives that were available or that qualified. But here we are. So people are using it. There has been some, in my opinion, kind of over the topness about how difficult it is to install it. Obviously, the Xbox solution is easier. It's literally just a drive you pop in the back of your system. But installing this thing isn't that big of a deal. But if you think about the day-to-day typical user, or the kids who are going to be playing it, or the adults who don't know computers, or the even older people who don't know computers, taking your system apart, even if it is a couple screws, is still scary, and you still do need to put that SSD in the right way. Now, there's only one way to put it in, but if you try to put it in the wrong way and force it, you'll break your SSD that's probably almost as expensive as your system. So there's that, there's also the whole thing of, I've seen a lot of comparisons, people saying like, yeah, the Xbox One is easier, but it's a inferior drive. Now, if you look at the actual drives that are in the two systems and what the requirements are for the expansion ones, I mean, the PlayStation 5 drive is faster. It moves more data more quickly. The thing about that, though, is that you'll never be able to tell, at least from what I can tell, because the only games that will take full advantage of the full advantage in speed that Sony has are Sony games. I could be wrong, but I would assume all third-party games are going to be not be designed for the top end, because you have to think that third party games are still going to have, especially games that are cross gen, are going to have to be able to work on hard drives and regular SSDs and now M.2s and even the super fast M.2 that the PS5 uses. So at the end of the day, you'll probably see a very small, if any, difference on third-party games, and then obviously the same thing as with Sony games. On Microsoft games, Halo, you won't be able to tell the loading difference between PS5 and Series X because you can't play Halo on PS5, just the same as the other way around. So that whole thing is just, it's all the fanboyism stuff and the console war stuff that really is just a waste of time for everyone. So, at the end, I'm happy that the PlayStation 5 owners can finally expand their memories, especially because I believe the usable memory on the PS5 is only like 600 gigs. I assume there's some operating system stuff going on in there, and probably some allocation of the SSD for to basically use as like RAM and things like that to help support the system, maybe for quick start features and things like that. So this is probably a pretty exciting development for a lot of PlayStation 5 owners, for the 15 or 20 there are out there, because these things are so hard to find. So I'm curious to how it works out in the long run. I think Xbox is going to eventually open up the manufacture of the special M.2 connection to other companies than just Seagate. Best case scenario is that eventually someone is going to make that proprietary plug, and it'll just be a device that you can stick any M.2 in, and so you can buy a 250 gig or a 4 terabyte M.2, pop it into this adapter, pop it into the back of your Xbox, and have all the memory you want. I suspect that Microsoft signed a deal with Seagate for probably a year or 2 years or something, to not do that. But I think you may see some nefarious people maybe start that sooner than later, and then I wouldn't be surprised if Xbox eventually just allows it for for actual production with partners. So it's interesting. It's something to keep an eye on, because the memory thing will matter, especially as time goes on and some of these games get bigger and things like that. So so any PS5 owners who are listening, congrats on your expansion if you're in the beta, and I bet by the end of the year they'll have it out for everyone. My next bit here is talking about the Ascent. So that is a game made by Neon Giants. It's their first game. It is on Xbox Game Pass for Xbox and PC. I believe you can also buy it on Steam straight up. So if you haven't seen or heard me talk about it or seen anything about it, it's a twin stick shooter type game. It's got some RPG elements, but that's definitely not the main focus. It's got some story. It's definitely not the main focus. It's basically just this really gritty, very punchy, satisfying twin stick shooter that uses cover and different types of augments and skills and stuff. It's really fun, and it is gorgeous. It is an insanely, just ridiculously gorgeous game. It is so pretty. The cyberpunk aesthetic really isn't my thing, but it looks so good, and I'm really enjoying it. So I've only played about an hour and a half, 2 hours of it so far. The gunplay feels great, the movement feels great, the dodging and stuff feels really good. The first like augment or skill you get is this kind of like super punch, and the way it affects the enemies, or at least the low level enemies. If there's like a dude running at you with a baseball bat, you do this punch and it sends a shockwave at them, and what it does is it sends their body flying backwards, and then where their body was when you used it, this like red mist of, I guess, blood goes up into the air and then just fades away. So there's their body flying in the background, and then this mist body that just floats up and goes away. It feels so satisfying. It's a really cool game. It's very good. It's not as deep as I think some people wanted it to be. I kind of pulled back my expectations a bit. I kind of have a feeling this is a playthrough it, enjoy it, maybe come back in a few months and play it again type of game. I think there were some people that thought this was going to be like a full RPG experience with like, really in-depth like conversations and things like that. It's not. I don't think your character even speaks. It's very simple in that way. but it's this company's first game, and they only have 12 devs. And when you play it, like, I'm assuming it's going to be a 10 or 15 hour game, with some ability to go back and play it again if you want. For what I was looking for, it's dope. If you want to see me playing it, you can go to twitch.com or twitch.tv/Bondiesel and look at my VODs. I played it on Thursday for about an hour on stream, and it is just so fun. Um, there has been some interesting media reactions. It seems like people playing it. I'm playing it on Series X. It seems like people playing it on PC have had some mixed experiences with the performance. I didn't notice a single hitch when I was playing it on Series X. It seems like people are having some pretty significant issues, seeing big bugs and things like that. I haven't seen that yet. If I do, I'll definitely update in another episode. But I can't help but notice that a lot of the kind of neutral and negative reviews I've seen about it are from people who tend not to be very kind to Xbox. It's not a perfect game. It's a very simple game, and it definitely has room to be criticized. But I think if you see any reviews of it, like under like, it's like a 7 out of 10, read closely, and maybe read some other reviews by those people and see kind of where they lean, because I think for what it is, it's hard for me to think that someone could rate it much lower, but to each their own. But yeah, so check it out. If you have Game Pass, obviously definitely check it out. If you have to pay for it, if it's 20 or 30 bucks, I actually don't know how much it is on Steam. I think it's worth it. I would probably wait, if you care about what I think, until I can update in another episode or two once I've beaten the game and I can give a more thorough feeling or review of it. But from what I've seen so far, it's pretty dope. So the third story here is talking about the Halo Infinite beta flights have begun. So I think on Thursday they started putting out some beta of the PvP of Halo Infinite. And it started off where it could just be you, and if you wanted to team up with people, you could, playing against kind of low-level bots. Then the next day, I think on Friday, they introduced high-level bots that people are like really raving about how difficult they are. And I believe either today or soon, they're introducing actual PvP where you'll be able to fight against actual people. I did not get an invite, unfortunately. I realized too late that I had submitted my beta information for the console, which they're not doing yet, and I never actually submitted my PC invite. So I did. I've done it since. It involves running a program and sending them all of your computer stats, answering some questions. So I'm probably millions down the list at this point, so I probably won't get it. I wish I would have done it the right way months ago when they offered people to sign up, but here we are. From what I've seen people who aren't big Microsoft goons or not even really into Halo, like talking about how even at this early stage, it feels very tight. And when it comes to the PvP mechanics and the shooter mechanics, and just the way the game feels, like it feels like a masterful PvP game. And this is just them playing against bots, and they said the guns feel great, the movement feels great. Just it's really exciting seeing, because obviously I have the handful of people I follow who we're gonna juice this up no matter what it felt like that. They just love Halo, they love Xbox, whatever. But then there's been people who I don't really follow that closely, who I feel like kind of dog on Xbox or even Halo, who are like, nah, this is pretty dope. Like, it feels really good. So that gets me super excited. I've watched a decent amount of streams and videos and stuff about it. I mean, it looks great. It feels like, I want to feel that Halo 2 PvP feeling again. And it looks like this is as close as we may ever get, in a very, very good way. So if I'm able to get into the flights and play a little bit of it, obviously I'll give that experience. The actual game is only a few months away, probably. We still don't have an actual release date. Most people are assuming middle or late November to correspond with the 20th anniversary of the franchise. So we'll have to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in December, maybe closer to Christmas, to try to drive some of that hype. But we'll have to wait and see. So far, Halo Infinite, the PvP beta, looks great, and it's really exciting to see who has been excited about it and the things they're saying. So check it out. There's a bunch of streamers playing it. There's a bunch of videos about it. Yeah, so check it out. I will be too. There's some unfortunate ongoing issues with the Activision situation. He had some issues where it seems like they hired a law firm that most recently was known for breaking up the Amazon employees union attempts. So it seems like Activision is kind of doubling down in the background to try to make sure this moment doesn't turn into something that's unfortunate for them, which is a huge bummer. That instead of actually trying to listen and change, they're just battening down the hatches. And this brought up, so on Wednesday there was a walkout scheduled by the Activision employees. What also came up that day was a petition, and it involved a ton of Ubisoft employees. So if any of you remember, it feels like it was 10 years ago, but it wasn't. It was only a few months. There were a bunch of allegations that came out about a bunch of people at Ubisoft, people in management, people in PR, people all over the place, people I know or knew, that the allegations ranged, right, and you never downplay the stuff. There's things that may have been or were simple misunderstandings, or just miscommunications, and then there were like systematic and very purposeful and very horrifying allegations of rape and sexual assault and all kinds of awful stuff. So in that time since then, Ubisoft, some people have left, or were fired, or were allowed to retire, or leave on their own. But there's also been a lot of just moving around, or sticking people in places where maybe they wouldn't be thought of for a while, and then thrown back into the fray. And so there's a large number of Ubisoft employees, current and former, even a ton of people who I follow and interact with fairly regularly, who have put their name on a petition and been pushing it really hard on social media, being like, hey, we need to take some real action. Ubisoft, unfortunately, is really known for its bureaucracy, for its loyalty to people, and even if those people are the ones that are subject to a lot of these allegations, it seems like it's kind of a cultural thing in Ubisoft that if you rubbed my back, then I'll save yours. And no matter how stale their games get, no matter how samey all their games start to look, no matter, as long as they're pulling in cash, it seems like they will support the people, whether they're people who have been accused of things or not, whether they're doing a good job or not. It seems like there's a lot of resistance at the upper levels of Ubisoft to truly allow a turnover and to truly allow change, and for things to happen that frankly need to happen in that company. Because it's kind of, it's a two-sided thing. You have these employees who, and I'm sure to a point, it's studio to studio. I've poked around and I've asked and I've kind of kept an eye out. And it seems like this stuff, while I'm sure it's happened at Massive, doesn't seem like it's as big of a cultural issue there, where it seems like there's some very specific other studios like Singapore and things like that, where it's a huge issue. And the thing is that whether it's an issue at so-and-so studio or not, if it's happening at another studio, that still represents them. So what happens is you have employees start to feel like the company doesn't care about this stuff, and they'll leave. These people will leave Ubisoft, they'll leave Massive, they'll leave Red Storm, they'll leave these studios that, I assume a lot of people here are Division fans. We care about that, because we want, these great devs with all this experience and so on to stay and to continue making great games and learn from mistakes of the old games and do this and that. And when you lose people, it's also hard to get new people in. If all this crazy stuff is happening and Ubisoft has all this bad press, and because they aren't taking the actions they need to take, they can't pull in that new studio lead or that new head developer or lead or whatever from another studio who could have really helped them with their future projects. Um, so I support all of the call outs and all the stuff completely. I think Ubisoft's in a weird spot right now, man, and I think that they can really turn a corner or not. And I think that they need to really turn a corner both in their IPs and in their way they treat their employees. Um, because I don't think that Ubisoft's in a better spot today than they were a year ago. I don't really care about their how much money they're making. I don't care about how well Valhalla sold. I don't care about how well Far Cry 6 is going to sell. I don't care about that stuff because we've learned over the years that sales doesn't equal quality. And there's a lot of games that have only sold 500,000 copies that are probably better than the Ubisoft games that have sold more than 10 million copies. So both from a morale or a responsibility standpoint and just purely from a gameplay standpoint. So yeah, so and we'll keep an eye on that as I see updates or if I see things that come up, any statements about that. I'll continue to talk about it on the podcast. Yeah, we'll go from there. The second to last topic I have here is a Microsoft Flight Simulator. It did just come out. It is also on. It came out for the consoles, for the Xbox, for the Xboxes. So it's been out on PC for a while. Highly rated game. I never played it on PC because my PC can definitely not handle it. So I was really excited to check this out. I never really played the flight sim games when I was younger, but I was very heavy into the Microsoft Combat Flight Simulator games, which were these World War II combat flight sims that were just amazing, especially for the time. I'm sure they look terrible now, but at the time they were like photoreal, for what we knew. And so I played a bit on stream on Tuesday. So if you want to check out my VOD, you can check it out on Twitch. And it's great. There were so many things it's just such an awe-inspiring game. Like you look around, it's just so pretty. I flew around New York. I flew around DC. Or no, I didn't get to DC. I flew around Maryland. I flew around Malmo and Copenhagen and Paris and can't remember where else. It's just so pretty. It's not fun, really. I mean, like I flew through the Eiffel Tower and then crashed the second time I did it. Like I'm not gonna pretend like it's like the most the most exciting. I'm not gonna put 1,000 hours into Microsoft Flight Sim, but I'll go back because they're updating things. They're taking parts of the world and prettying them up. Basically, they use an AI that takes Bing Maps footage and makes buildings and skins them appropriately and things like that. And then they go to specific big cities, notable places, and pretty them up and make them look a lot nicer. And it really is a freaking gorgeous game. Again, it's not going to blow your socks off with excitement. But like for me, it was nice to just kind of get up in a cool looking plane, fly to some cool places, look at some cool stuff, and talk to chat while I was streaming. Am I gonna stream it every week? No, I'm obviously not. But like when the Top Gun DLC comes out and things like that, I absolutely want to jump on and play it. So Microsoft Flight Sim, if you have access to it through Game Pass, definitely check it out. If you prefer to buy your games, it depends on who you are. If you're into more laid back, chill, I played on the absolute easiest level. I have no desire to actually flight sim anything, but if you're into buying that whole contraption with all the buttons and the stick and the pedals and the throttle and everything, I've heard it's amazing if you want to get that deep into it. If not, I think it's at least worth a look. The last topic here is jumping back to The Division. I really have tried to move this channel on from being just about Division, but I still can't help but want to talk about it most of the time. So last week I ran a poll on Twitter, basically saying, how do you feel about the Division franchise currently and in the future? And I asked for 3 simple answers: positive, negative, or neutral. You see people run polls a lot on Twitter. I took stats classes for psych, and ran multiple independent studies that I presented at conferences and things when I was in college. And you see a lot of people run polls, and they're always so biased and so stupid. And the way that they ask the question, the way that they write the answers are always just so dumb to try to get the answer they want. And especially people who like have communities that like someone who only talks about PvP stuff will be like, is PvP good for Division? And then it'll be like 90% yes, with like 30 votes. And they, try to take that as being significant. It's not. This poll, where I just asked people's general feeling and gave some very simple answers for them to use. The results as of right now, it has 1 day left for people to vote with around 260 votes. People's feelings about the Division IP are 35.8% negative, 35.4% neutral, and 28.8% positive. That's about what I expected. The funny thing I found is that when I've ran polls, division related ones over the years, I feel like I always get, 200 or 300 votes. And I always get it. It's almost always, if I give 3 options, like a positive option, a neutral option, and a negative, it almost always breaks down to like 33, 33, 33. So this one's a little skewed, but not by much. Honestly, it surprises me that almost 30% of people are positive about what's going on right now. I'm glad that people aren't completely dissatisfied, but we essentially haven't had new content in 2 years. If you want to count the seasons as new content, I get it. That's a fair opinion. But I'm under the impression that content was all done with Warlords of New York. So they just did it and then it came out, but they didn't like continually work on it. I'm sure they had to finish up, gun models and skins and some basic stuff, but for the most part, we essentially haven't gotten content since Warlords dropped. And where we are at with that is that it was okay. Warlords was great, but it was a fairly short experience. And, it's pretty obvious that Ubisoft decided that that was it and that they didn't let them keep working on stuff, because when they changed their mind to let them keep working on stuff, we are now in a giant gap of no information while they have to literally rebuild a team from scratch and then start all this new content from scratch. That's why unfortunately, I've mostly been able to unfollow and block and be able to get away from a bunch of the toxic content creators and just kind of nasty people in the community in general, who just kind of constantly harass the devs and who seemingly hate this game. But even after years of disappointment to them, they still can't talk about anything else. So it's just, I love the game, but even I've kind of taken my attention off of it for a while. And so you see these posts and these videos and these tweets by people, and it's always the same type of thing. It's always some kind of like ignorant, like overly blunt, like not very adult statement or question about the game. Like, hey, where's everything at, you idiots? And then they tag like 15 developers. Only like 3 are still even with Massive or even working on the game anymore. And you actually saw there's some devs who were like, can you guys please stop tagging? Like, stop tagging people who aren't even with us anymore. And I saw Yannick responded to someone who had done something like this in the last couple of days and was like, hey, like, we'll give information when we have it. We just don't yet. And this poll I ran it after I saw that because I was just kind of curious to get a vibe off of people. And what I think is interesting about it is that like there is like a lack of recognition by people that like it's a damned if they do or don't situation, right? If they say, well, we're thinking about trying to do this and that and this other thing, but then people will latch onto that immediately and they'll do multiple things with it. They'll assume that's exactly what we're getting. They'll make up all of their own conclusions about what it's going to actually play like or look like, and they'll already start tearing it down. When these content creators and these people reach out for this information, it's never to be like, oh wow, that's super dope, I can't wait. It's always so they can pump out some pump and dump 10-minute and 1-second video about like, is the division getting canceled? My 5 takes on this new content that we don't know anything about. Like And so I personally prefer that they stay completely dead silent about what they're working on until it's done, until what they show us is what we're getting. Because everything is like this, especially in games, especially with Division. Um, this community just runs with stuff, and content creators run with stuff. It's almost always negative. It's almost always you know presumptuous and putting their own spin or their own sensationalism on it, and it's almost never thoughtful or thought-provoking or factual. And it's why, like, I haven't consistently listened to another Division content creator 3 or 4 years at least. It's been a long time because it's just so much riffraff. It's so much pointless stuff. It's so much, people trying to get their 27 cents on their video with 2,000 views, on ad revenue, or making their 10-minute 1 second build video that looks exactly like every other 300 build videos. And so, like, it's a patience thing. So the fact that there's almost 30% of people who are still positive about the IP, that's dope. Those people are probably ones excited about Heartland, excited about X Defiant, even excited about the Division 2 content. I know for me, I probably am honestly falling into the neutral category. I'm excited about all this media stuff they're doing with Division, about Heartland. Not really about X Defiant, but I'll at least check it out. I am excited about the DLC that's coming for Division 2. There is just a part of me that is worried. A part of me is worried that Ubisoft is cashing out. They're doing all this stuff to try to cash out on the franchise before they throw the Division franchise into everything else the way they have a Splinter Cell, or they may take the Division franchise and just completely genericify it the way they have Ghost Recon, like with Breakpoint and even Wildlands. So I was hoping that all of this newfound attention on the Division with the book and movie and audiobook and comics and all this stuff was going to be like, hey, we're invested in this IP. Unfortunately, I have this weird gut feeling now that it feels a lot more like they're like, hey, we're gonna suck this thing dry before we abandon it for years and maybe forever. So I don't want to be overly negative about it, even though that may be hard to believe if you're listening to me right now. But I'm definitely concerned. I am definitely worried about where they're going with the Division franchise. I wouldn't say I'm negative at this point. I'm definitely disappointed in general. But I'm also willing to be patient and wait. So yeah, we'll go from there. Okay. So we had a few questions this week. I'll hit those pretty quickly and we'll wrap this thing up. Master Prime on Twitter says, some light of hope for the Division franchise. Maybe. I don't know, man. It's hard to tell. There is a lot of stuff going on that should be a good thing. But as I've said in the last couple episodes, it could be a bad thing too. So we'll have to wait and see. Master Prime also asked about the Halo Infinite beta, which I already addressed. What I've seen so far, I'm really excited about. And I made a tweet saying I think Detroit style pizza is better than Chicago. It's because Chicago style pizza is soup lasagna and it's good. But I want to eat that like once every 5 years. Detroit style pizza is heaven in a box. If you haven't tried it before and you have a Jets Pizza in your area, that's a chain, or if you have a local mom and pop Detroit style pizza place, grab it. It's delicious. Ron Shock on Twitter asked, have you hopped back into Division 1 lately? I match made for a couple legendaries this week and ended up in full groups each time. I wonder if their player counts are up because the Division 2 is stale with content. I would be willing to bet that Division 2's player base is probably like 15 or 20 times more than Division 1. But the reason that people can't go back and play Division 1 and still matchmake well is because they designed that system really well. And I think they got rid of the region locks a year or two ago. I know on like survival and stuff now, you can matchmake with people all over the world now. Now your ping is going to be terrible. But I believe they got rid of region locks. So even if there's only a couple thousand people playing Division 1, you should matchmake well, especially if you're playing end-game content, which is dope. I have not played Division 1 since Division 2 released. I've popped in to record some footage for videos and stuff, but I haven't played it. I played that game 4,000 plus hours. I will never play Division One again. It's a great game. I think people overhype it a little bit too much. I think people have very convenient memories of Division One, and it's a great game. I think things like survival and stuff are fun. I think survival got stale after about 2 weeks of playing it, and it literally hasn't changed since then. So, for people who still enjoy it, I think that's super cool. But I think that there's a bit of editorializing going on when people talk about Division 1 and 2 compared. Now, is Division 2 stale right now? 100%, absolutely. I have no desire to run seasons again. I was okay with them the first time through. I will never play those seasons again. So I've seen some rumors and stuff that people have been throwing out that the new content they're making are manhunts and stuff. They wouldn't have made a new team to do manhunts. So unfortunately, it really bums me out to see people who have, fairly significant pull in the Division community, for better or worse, saying things like that, just because, it pumps up that view count. But yeah, I am fairly confident that Division 2 is probably still a more popular game than people think. I say that as someone who hasn't played it since the Fail Out mission dropped. So I do have to at least be honest about that. Okay, so content updates. The streaming, I have been back. I've been streaming fairly consistently again. I really want to say thank you to everyone who has stopped by. I really do appreciate it, especially since I'm not playing Division content, at least not for now. When Heartland comes out, when Division 2 DLC comes out, I'll definitely play it. I may even stream some X Defiant. I've got some reservations about that game, but I'm still willing to try it out. So what seems like is working out is to do some short streams during the week, and then try to do like a 2 or 3 hour, quote unquote long stream, long for me, on the weekend, either Saturday or Sunday when I have time. So during the week, stream for like an hour and a half, try something new, play something I'm excited about, whatever. And then we'll kind of go from there. If I can expand that time, I will absolutely do it. It has been nice to chat with people, see some familiar faces, see some new faces. Yeah. So, and then, yeah, I really want to earn back. I would like to see some old faces again. I understand I basically abandoned my streaming platform. Even when I wasn't streaming that much, I still was holding 20, 25, 30 subs at any given time. I think I'm down to like 3 or 4 now, which is honestly, the fact that there's still 3 or 4 people who sub to me is like very heartwarming. I've got one guy, Boom, who's subbed to me. It looks like he resubbed 46 months recently. It's almost 4 years. He was my first sub that wasn't a friend, and my longest standing sub still at this point. So, stuff like that really makes me want to come back and keep playing. Being able to play games other than the Division definitely makes me want to stream again. It's just, I do miss seeing 20, 30, 40, 50 people when I would stream Division. Or more back in the day, compared to 5 or 10 people now. But honestly, I appreciate even one person who stops by. So yeah, content's going well. I'll work on videos and stuff as there's stuff that comes out that I want to talk about, like I did with X Defiant. Right now, I'm kind of not super motivated to make videos other than the podcast. But as things come up, I will do it. And that's what we're going to wrap up with this week. I am Bondiesel on Twitch, where I stream here and there. It's twitch.tv/Bondiesel. You can check out my Twitter at Bondiesel or at the EchoCast if you only want game-related news and so on. You don't want to hear any of my stupid opinions. If you want some EchoCast or Bondiesel merch, please check out streamlabs.com/Bondiesel. That's all I have. So until next time.